Hi, this is John from Fantasy Football Geek with my first YouTube video, so go easy on it if you can. So I'm talking about my team for the so-called GW36. I call it so-called because really, as we all know, there are no actual games going on, but you do have the ability to do transfers. I mean, why Fantasy Premier League have set it up like this, only they will really know. But I've continued to make transfers just for the sake of it. I've done it based on a template, which is I'll talk about in a minute, and also on the fixtures to the end of the season as an overall sort of package. Although it will very much depend on how they are played out and grouped to the end of the season. So I'm going to start with how I normally structure my team. That's basically, the team is normally done in 4 categories. So there's the template player, which is basically comes from the 10 FPL managers I follow. If you know the site, you'll know the article that I do every week where I pick 10 managers who finished in the top 10k for the last 3 seasons, and I use the player who's been in their team in 7 out of 10 of their teams as a template player. I will generally put him in unless there's a fairly compelling reason not to. If a player is not in, he will be matched up with what I call a template replacement player, which is basically the like-for-like player that is in the team instead of the template player. Then the other 2 categories are bench players. Basically, these are just cheap players who sit on the bench. Generally, I don't really want to over-invest on people who aren't going to be in the starting 11, although there are sort of flexibilities on that. And the last category is the remaining players who I call difference makers. A common term for non-template players are differentials. They're normally categorized by ownership percentage. Mine isn't really. Mine is just categorized by the fact that they're not a template player, they're not a template replacement player, and they're not a bench player. So they're the remaining players. Generally, I pick these from my player rankings articles, and what I'm really looking for is a player who has good underlying stats and has good upcoming fixtures, and I rank as being value for money. So those are the general categories. Let's just run through the template players for a start. As I said, these are in 7 out of 10 of the top 10 FPL managers that I follow. These are players, as I said, who have been in the top 10k overall rank the last 3 seasons. So I'll start off with Salah, who is probably the most important player, I'd say, just because of his captain potential going forward. Just assuming there isn't sort of mass rotation once Liverpool have won the league. Second, I would put in De Bruyne, who for me is probably the obvious alternate captain option going forward. So he's second in place. Third would be Alexander-Arnold or another Liverpool defender. But for me, given his attacking potential, there really is no other option for me to put in from the Liverpool defence. Then I'd probably go for Bruno Fernandes. I've written an article on him where I'm a bit sceptical. I think his shot selection leaves a lot to be desired, and his underlying stats really at this moment in time, based on 4 games, are pretty ordinary to say the least. He does have set pieces, and he probably will have penalties. So for the moment, I've decided that I'm not really interested in getting into some sort of showdown with another template replacement player. So Fernandes is in the team. After that, I've gone for Jimenez. Wolves have got good fixtures to the end of the season, and he's been extremely consistent and one of the better value strikers and one of the better performers all season. Then I'm going for the Wolves defence. I've got Bolly, but that's mainly because I can't afford Doherty. Doherty comes up as the top attacking defender so far this season. I would definitely have him in my team if you can get him, but for me, I just don't really have the funds. Then I've got Calvert-Lewin, who is putting up really strong stats for the price, and although Everton don't have good fixtures, he is really in top form and his template. The last, so that is all the template players, all 7 of them. There are actually 8. Pope is the other one. I don't have him in. I unfortunately sold him just before he went on to his hot streak. And I have McCarthy of Southampton as the template replacement player. He hasn't really matched up, but at the moment I'm deciding what to do in terms of Pope, and that will come out later in the video. So now let's get our bench players. Really, you'd normally say there's 4 of them. So first up, we've got the bench goalkeeper, which is Button. At the moment, I really would like another goalkeeper. We don't know how the fixtures are going to be grouped, but it's quite possible there could be a number of double game weeks ahead. So I prefer to have 2 goalkeepers because it won't box me into using my wild card before I use my bench boost. It could give me the flexibility to use my bench boost at a different point. But it's Button for the moment. Otherwise, it's then Basham of Sheffield United. They have a good defence, reasonably good fixtures. Cantwell of Norwich, and Holgate there as well. That's obviously more bench players than I've mentioned, but more bench players than there are actually. No, that's the right amount. Sorry, that's the right amount of bench players for the bench. But I'll add Soyuncu in there as well, because really in what will be a 3-4-3 formation, those last 3 will probably rotate with Alexander-Arnold and Bolly. Could even have a 2 into 4 goes down to 2 rotation there. So that leaves the difference makers of really where there are only really 2. Barnes of Leicester, who's been putting up some pretty strong stats, although they've dropped off a bit recently, despite his sort of 2-goal performance. And Firmino of Liverpool. I've kept with Firmino because I think he's the player who's undershot his underlying stats by the most out of anybody. And really, he doesn't have any particular history of doing this. He's accrued about 4 goals and expected goals without scoring recently, and I really feel he is a really big score waiting to happen. Again, like Salah, he has this problem as to what will happen once Liverpool win the league. So they're out of the Champions League, so maybe they'll just keep playing them, but that's a situation I'll react to. So at the moment, I've got sort of 3 transfers. So you can see I've got 1.2 million in the bank. I've got 2 transfers this week, but 3 transfers that I'd ultimately like to do. One of them is Soyuncu to Maguire. The other is Button to Pope to fill the template. And the last one is Cantwell to Moy, who I think is more secure and has good set piece potential. Now the problem is I'm 0.5 million short of that, so this week I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to play this. My options are to either go Maguire and Ramsdale as my 2 transfers. Ramsdale and Rayner are the only 2 4.5 million keepers. I'm not even sure. I mean, I don't really like either defence. I mean, they're 2 of the worst defences in the league. I'm not even sure what happens to Rayner once he gets to the end of his loan. So it really is, and he hasn't actually been in great form. So it wouldn't surprise me if Nyland actually took his place. So Ramsdale would be the other option, and really the only 4.5 million goalkeeper. I really don't want a Bournemouth defender, and I have no confidence. Bournemouth goalkeeper, and I have no confidence in their defence. But that is the only option. So my second thought is that basically I leave Soyuncu in, and I put Pope in to complete the template. And my other transfer would be Holgate to Charlie Taylor. So at least I cover the, oh sorry, I wouldn't do that. Leave Holgate in place and I just do Cantwell to Moy. Charlie Taylor would have actually happened in the other scenario if I wanted to cover the clean sheet. So that's the options I have. I haven't actually decided at this moment in time. I will do, once I actually do decide, I will do a quick follow-up video just showing you what I've done. So that's it at the moment. Thanks very much, and I hope you found it useful.